Hello guys, and welcome to a new Steel Division 2 video today by me, Vulcan. Today I have for you another first look at one of the divisions from the latest DLC, Tribute to D-Day. In this one we're going to be having a look at the 12th SS-Panzer, also known as the Hitlerjugend. If you'd like to read the description on the right hand side, feel free to pause it, but I'm going to jump straight on in. Okay, so previously in Steel Division Normandy 44, we had things like the Beuter Firefly and the Beuter Cromwell that were captured units, and I expect to see them here. Let's jump in first of all to the Recon tab. Yeah, those two units were very staple at the start of Steel Division Normandy 44 games, especially if you were playing the 12th SS. In this case, we've got the Bmw Motorcycles. We've of course seen those before. Aufklärer. These come in with a wide range of transports. As usual, you've got the 221 with the Panzerbuchse and also the 222s. Now the 222s obviously going to be a lot better than the Panzerbuchse. The Panzerbuchse are not as good as it used to be due to the nerfs to critical hits. Either way, moving on, we got the 259s. These are awesome half tracks. Good to see those in here. Generally, we have quite a large number of different units. You've got the 231 as well with the 20 mils. Spätrupp, they can come in with Recon half tracks and also the Schwimmwagen. And then we have the 233, which has certainly raised in popularity lately due to its high rate of fire and effectiveness versus support weapons like small AT guns and infantry guns. And there's also the Aufklärer Panzer IV here. But this is what we're talking about here, is the Beuter Firefly. Now it's interesting that it's actually in the Recon tab. But this is a very, very strong tank. You can get it in Phase A. It comes with the 1-star veterancy, and it has a very nice amount of accuracy there. So you've got the 45% plus the 6% from the veterancy, so that makes it 51% accurate, which is very, very nice indeed. You've got the 100mm of frontal armor, and this thing could be actually a force to be reckoned with in the early game, just because generally we haven't seen Fireflies in the early game yet. I think the Canadians could only get them in Phase B and C. So having these available at a reasonable speed with decent firepower and reasonable armor, I think this could actually be pretty damn strong. We also have access to the Aufklärer Panther D, but yeah, the only real new item here in the 12th SS is the Beuter Firefly. I certainly think that that will be played out quite a bit, just because it is a nice, reasonably priced tank to use in the early game. Infantry tab. Now this is where things are going to get a bit spicy. Now, a lot of these units are similar to units we've seen before. So we've got Pioneers, of course, we've got the Sturm Pioneers, we've got the Panzergrenz. And the Panzergrenz can come in half tracks. We do have 50 half tracks available here. So that's really awesome. Pioneer Führer. Pretty standard, Panzergrenführer, Panzergrenführer, Panzerfaust. But there is a new trait that I heard about with the new 12th SS, and it is this one right here. It is the fanatical trait. I was just trying to get the pop-up. So this type of unit has achieved a reputation for ferocity and fanaticism on the battlefield, which means this unit will never surrender. Now, I'm a little concerned that this is going to be really, really strong and maybe a little bit broken, but I think you can still pin them down. They just can't be surrendered when they're pinned down. So you'll have to like run troops on top of them to kill them off rather than having them be surrendered by a truck, like sprinting through them after they've been hit by off-map or something, right? So in some ways, it's kind of a nice trait, but it's also going to prevent a lot of the normal ways of dealing with large clumps of enemies, which means you can probably get away with having these quite concentrated and just hope that you don't take as much damage from, like, say, off-map and stuff. Yeah, in general, pretty similar numbers, I think, to normal. Generally, they're coming in at higher veterancy. You can still get normal Panzergrenz at lower veterancy, and the Panzergrenz with Panzerfaust, which have lower availability. So yeah, nothing really new here to see other than the fanatical trait, but this is a big deal for the 12th SS-Panzer, and something that I think is going to be really, really interesting to see, especially in competitive play, and how that really can be exploited. And moving on to the tank tab, we have here the Panzer IV Js, there's going to be the Panzer IV H, We've got, of course, the Panzer IV Führer. It's going to be 5 cards of Panther Ds. Panther Ds are actually really nice because they have the 110 point cost and they still have a really good amount of firepower, similar to the Panther A. Then you got the Panther D Führer. There's 2 cards of Tigers, which is really nice. Do love a good Tiger, but these are forced to come in Phase B. You can't get them in Phase A. You can only get Panther Ds in Phase A. There is, of course, Whitman with his awesome camo. I really love the camo on this tank. It looks awesome. So good to see that in the game. You can get 2 Tiger leaders, and I think most people will probably just bring this card for fun, even if it's not the most efficient card to bring in this deck. And then, of course, we have the Panther G with the absolutely awesome camo on it as well. So, yeah, nothing really particularly new again. I think these Panzer IV Js will be particularly useful just because they are cheap and they have like that great long-range sniping capability similar to the Panzer IV but 10 points cheaper. I think the Panther Ds, again, you're going to be able to bring these in at a reasonably good veterancy just because there are so many cards of tanks that you can bring in. So I think in general what we're going to see is like high vetted tanks and strong infantry to support that. But there is going to be a limited amount of infantry on the field due to the small amount of cards you can get. So that's something I've noticed so far. Support tab, let's have a look what's going on here. So we've got Feldgendarmerie, pretty standard. No real reason to use them though in this deck because you don't have any disheartened units. You've got quite the opposite, you've got the fanatical units. Flammenwerfer, of course, good for Phase A pushes. The Flammpanzer, this did get its flame ammunition increased a little while back, and therefore it could potentially find its way into this deck, but honestly the range still lets it down quite a bit, so I don't expect it too much. Got 2 cards of IGs, which is nice, and 3 cards of MG42s, so if you like either of those, you've got them in abundance. Opel Blitz munitions, you've got the Grela. The Grela, it can be okay, but it takes a lot of micromanagement to make work effectively, which isn't as great in this game as it was in Steel Division Normandy 44. In Steel Division Normandy 44, microing individual units was a lot better because it was a much smaller scale. Whereas now in Steel Division 2, of course, with like 1 million units on the map, not literally obviously, but you don't have as much time to individually micro units, and so units like the Grela aren't picked as much because you can't get good value out of them unless you micro them a lot. Now this is really interesting. We got the Dingo here, the captured Dingo, which is the SBW 202 command car. Very cool. And that's your Phase A commander as well. So I really like this a lot. That's awesome. And then you got the Panzer IV and Panther A for your other commander units. Yeah, having this, and the fact it's armored as well, and even has a brain gun, is really, really cool. Really cool. I like that you're almost forced to use this. It kind of adds a bit of variety and a bit of flavor to the division. And it does so by giving you a unit that you have to use. Because generally bringing in Phase A commanders is important. Now this is interesting. The anti-tank tab is tiny. You got Kader Panzerschrecks, Kader Pack 40s, and Jagdpanzers. Jagdpanzers, I think... Oh, you can only bring them in Phase B and C. Interesting. Well, I was going to say these might be a preference in A, but you can't even bring them in A. So I reckon we'll probably see people focusing on Pack 40s in the anti-tank tab and maybe only bring 1 card. We have the anti-air tab now, and the anti-air tab I always remember being really good in Steel Division Normandy 44 because of the verbal vins. And these verbal vins are really nice for shooting down enemy aircraft because they have the 420 mils, similar to SDKF Z71s. But the good thing about a verbal vin is it's armored. You only get 1 card of them, so you're going to have to decide where you want to bring them in and when you want to bring them in. Also got a card of Mobile Wagons. Mobile Wagons are great, especially now you have both cards, because you can actually afford to bring these in A, whilst bringing in the verbal vins probably like later on in C maybe, supported by some 88s and probably the Flak 36s as well. I'm not sure the 20 mils will be used that much unless they can be brought in. Oh, they can be brought in with the 20 mil flak on the back of the truck as well. So, I mean, this could be an option for sure. Right, over to the artillery tab. So we've got the Beobachter, of course, Barryführer, pretty standard stuff so far. 81mm mortar, LEFH 105, everything we've seen before. I'm not a massive fan of these at all because they are not very high damage. and they don't have great accuracy. Whereas the SK-18-100, it has way better accuracy, even though technically the LAFH-105 has more damage. That's in terms of dispersion, that is, but I don't think there's a dispersion stat, so you kind of just gotta, you know, play the game to sort of work that stuff out, or maybe use a spreadsheet or something that's on the community side of things. Anyway, it's nice that they have the more than half tracks. You got a card of 257s and a card of 251-2s. These are really important, like having the mortar support early on I think is going to be super important for sure. You got access to 3 cards of SFH 150mm, which is really, really nice, and 2 cards of Hummels as well. That means you could technically have 6 Hummels, which is actually a lot. And these can be really, really tough to deal with. You've also got access to 2 Werflammen 40s as well. Damn. That is some juicy, juicy artillery. Those Werflammens can be like horrible to deal with when you're playing against them, because they can do so much damage and they can kill things like IS-2s on their own. And I think this will be the way in which you have to deal with bigger tanks like IS-2s, especially the 1944 variants with the 180mm of frontal armor, because your mainline tanks like Panthers and so on are going to have a difficult time dealing with those unless they can get really close. Like a Panther G at close range can, of course, take out an IS-2 in 1944 with the APCR, but until that point, like at range, the IS-2s are going to absolutely hammer your tanks to pieces. So having something like a Werflammen and an abundance of Hummels is going to be really, really useful. Let's have a look at the air tab. So we got the Ju-188 Recon aircraft, which is a decent Recon aircraft. It has the medium resilience and can stay in the air for quite a long time. You've got the Focke-Wulf 190G1. Now this was the one that comes with the 500kg bomb. These are very reliable for taking out support weapons and potentially one-shotting infantry squads that are the smaller infantry squads anyway, not necessarily 10-man ones. But yeah, could do a lot of damage with this 500kg bomb. And these are reasonably cheap, but they are kind of slow with that bomb. The Ju-188s, I'm not sure these are really going to be finding a place in this deck too much. The 50kg bombs, like the carpet bomber variants like this, I was kind of a fan of them because they can pin things and then you go in for the surrender on stuff. But I think having the ability to kill support weapons is much more effective than pinning them down for the most part. Especially when it comes to like AT guns on the edge of tree lines, I'd rather just drop a bomb and make sure it's dead rather than pin it down, have it fall back, and then kind of lose track of where it is. Like that tends to be the case when you're using these kinds of bombers. Anyway, moving on, we got the Focke-Wulf 190G3. This is a very nice payload. 3 250kg bombs, and it goes faster than the G1 variant. That is very nice. It does have worse agility though, quite really bad agility in comparison actually. So this can definitely be used more as a fighter bomber, whereas the Focke-Wulf 190G3 definitely a specialized bomber. But I love the camo, look at that. Wow, that looks really, really nice. That's a new camo for sure. I like that. Okay, we've got the Focke-Wulf 190G3R1 as well. This is the fighter variant. Agility, again, very bad on that. But I assume that's just because it has gun pods. Yeah, it's got twin 20mm gun pods. So 2 on each side, plus the 2 20mm in the wings. That's interesting. I wonder how good that would be at strafing then. Probably very good. And it has 540 km/h speed. So using this to pin down ground forces and maybe kill ground support weapons as well is something I would definitely like to try out. Then we got the usual fighter variant, which has the bad agility with the 4 20mm and 2 13mm guns. So yeah, I mean that's pretty standard stuff. And finally we have the 210mm rocket Focke-Wulf with the snake down the side. I think we've seen these in another division before. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of these. I'm definitely going to want to try out these boys with the 20mm guns in the wings. Anything heads on these, you're probably going to shoot it down. And then the ones with 3 250kg bombs, very nice payload. but certainly lacking that agility, so might get shot down by enemy fighters quite easily. And that is about it. So, a very interesting one. Let's quickly go through and throw in some units and see what I can put together here. So I really like the 231s over the 259s, just because the 250 or 231 can't be killed by infantry at close range with the close range grenades, whereas a 259 can, because it's technically open top, and you can chuck grenades in this little hatch, whereas this one, obviously closed top, can't happen. So I think this is a lot more reliable. I'd probably bring in those in phase A, and probably bring in some of these as well. You can get 6 of them in phase A, which is really, really nice. Also, Avkala, phase B with 222s. That's quite a lot of recon actually, but I think that's a pretty decent amount of cards. And also, just having the Boy to Firefly, because it's the Boy to Firefly, must be done, obviously. I think eventually this might actually get taken out. I don't think because of the availability it's really worth spending the activation points on, but it'd be fun to play around with while it lasts. Okay, so infantry, we probably want to get as many Pioneer Führer as we can. It might be worth using the artillery tab to get some leaders as well, because you have a very limited amount of infantry cards available. So I think what I'm going to do is we're going to do Panzergrens with Panzergren Führer in phase A with 3. I'll probably bring in some Pioneers in phase A as well. And then we'll bring in the Panzergrens with out Panzerfaust, some Opel Blitz. We'll do that. Could probably do Panzergrens with Panzerfaust in half tracks in phase A. Then we want phase B. We're just going to be more Panzergrens. This time with Opel Blitz. And then we need phase C, which would be Panzergrens with Panzerfaust. Probably in half tracks. And I'm not sure whether or not you can afford that last slot yet, so I might just have to come back to this. But what I'd likely do is keep that amount of infantry in phase A, because that's quite important. Only one card in phase B is fine. And then in phase C have a close range or long range unit and a close range unit. So I'd add a Sturm Pioneer or the other Pioneer units. Probably more Pioneers, honestly. Let's add them for now, because I think they're going to be necessary. Alright, tank tab. So in phase A, a card of these Panzer IV Js with the sniper veterancy will be really nice. So I think that's quite necessary. Having some Panther Ds in phase A, also going to bring in Whitman, of course. This just isn't even an option, you've just got to take it. I mean, why not? Phase B and C, Panther Gs. But otherwise, what do we need? Could go for up-vetted Panthers somewhat, or I could go for maybe some leaders. Yeah, the Panther D Führer in phase A, we get 2 of them on a card. That's actually pretty decent, so we'll bring that in. Maybe bring in some Tigers in phase B and phase C as well. Up-vetting those loses you too many of them. I'm thinking that's going to be okay, and we're probably going to build this more for balanced, I think. Just because you are reliant on Panther Gs and Tigers, and they're generally not going to build up too much in the early game. And we have, what, 5 Panthers and Panzer IV J in phase A, plus all those recon vehicles, plus that infantry. I think this is really shaping up to be a very, very strong division already. We definitely want the commander, get the Dingo in there. Oh, that's a good point, actually. We don't have the Boy to Cromwell in the support tab. That's interesting. I guess that's a historical thing that they didn't actually have one, maybe, and they took it out of the game. But Flammenwerfer here, I definitely probably want some of those to help us out in the early game with infantry engagements. Otherwise, I think it's probably just going to be either some IGs or supply, and I think supply is definitely necessary. We're going to need them in A for the Panthers, and also for any mortars we bring in, and we're going to need them in C to resupply things like the Werframmen and potentially the Hummels. I might even do 2 cards in phase C if we go all out on the Hummels, because we'll probably get through supply pretty quickly with those, especially if we're playing balanced into the late game. But having some IGs seems pretty important here. I guess if you're using 233s, maybe not so much. You're not really going to have much in the anti-tank tab. Probably just going to bring in some Pak 40s. I don't know if I want them in Phase A though. I'm not sure they're going to be terribly effective in Phase A. I mean, I guess Phase A would be the phase in which they'd be most effective, actually. Because later down the line, you're dealing with much heavier tanks, generally. And a lot more artillery that could easily pop those AT guns. I would definitely bring mobile Vulcans in Phase A, just because of the sheer availability. Bring Verbal Vins in Phase C. I think we're going to bring a card of 88s as well in Phase C. We'll bring them in with the multi-munitions just so we have extra trucks there. And I'm also going to bring in a card of the Black 36 37 mils. Okay, there we go. That's going to be our AA tab. That's pretty decent, honestly. That's a lot of AA. Into the artillery tab. I definitely want mortar cars. I think we're going to go for these ones just because the availability, they're cheaper. You do have less shells. You got 15 less HE shells and 10 less smoke rounds. And it does actually make quite a big difference, actually. Let's bring these ones. Yeah, we'll bring those ones. That way I don't have to waste supply as much on those. And I can focus the supply then on the Verflammens. We're going to bring Verflammens in B and C for sure. And I'm probably just going to do Phase C Hummels. And that will be my artillery for the most part. I think in this case having armored Hummels is much better than having the 150s on the ground. Yeah. Having 4 of these Verflammens is going to be so obnoxious. Imagine if you got all of those on the field. And one thing I have just realized is we've already hit the activation point cap, which makes me believe that I probably want to kind of drop something in the infantry here. It could possibly be the Pioneers, actually. Dropping out the Pioneers, just having Panzergren supported by Flammenwerfers in the early game, that frees up multiple activation points. We got like a solid 4 from doing that. That's going to give us access to the air, so we will go for the Focke-Wulf 190 bombers. How many of these do you get in Phase A? Is this the same availability between the two? It is. Okay, interesting. Yeah, we'll definitely bring these in. I think I'll go for Phase B. And how many of these can you get? Oh, they're quite low availability as well. Interesting. I think I'm going to bring one out in Phase A because it can kind of act as a fighter as well to shoot down things like IL-2s that might try and pop my Panthers. That's going to leave us with 1 point. I don't think I'm going to mess around too much with making this perfect activation points this time around. But that's kind of what I think the division might look like. Honestly, people might not even bring Pak 40s and just bring Jagdpanzers. Like, that doesn't seem like that bad of an idea. Because Jagdpanzers are very, very strong, cost-efficient units. So maybe we'll see that be the case. And the other thing that I might do here, if I was to make this a more competitive deck, I'd probably take out the Boy-to Firefly. I don't think it's actually necessary looking at the rest of the division. But it's there for flavor, and I would like to play around with it at least once or twice before I get rid of it. But yeah, there you go. That's a look at the 12th SS-Panzer. The fact they have these fanatical infantry is going to be majorly important in how you use the 12th SS. The fact they have a lot of tanks and all of this really strong artillery and AA is going to actually make them a really nasty late game support division. Like, especially in like a team game. Yes, you might run low in your infantry quite early, but having this much artillery and this AA and these tanks is going to be really, really hard to whittle down. So you've got to defeat this unit, this division early. I think having the Pioneers and Panzergrens in Phase C is important. I mean, you could even go as far as to take out the Pioneers, add some more Panzergrens, honestly, in Phase C. I think Pioneers sort of lose their effectiveness in the late game because there's a lot less close-range infantry in general to be fighting. So Panzergrens would be better for supporting your tanks at range. Either way, that's my thoughts on the 12th SS. Honestly, it looks really cool, and I'm really looking forward to play around with it, especially these aircraft. I'm curious how good these aircraft are going to be. I think the one with the 250 kilogram bombs going to be very reliable, but I'm not sure quite how good the gun pods and the 190 are going to be on the G3R1 variant. That could vary quite a bit. But yeah, the fanatical trait, be fun to try that out for sure. Getting all of this artillery on the field would be really nice. You could really push this to be a really strong juggernaut, I reckon. But yeah, that's it. So hopefully you guys are looking forward to playing with this as much as I am. Yeah, this is a cool one. Alright, hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one, where we'll be taking another look at an allied division. Catch you later, guys.